I still have no idea why the fuck chicken dish is named after him, but there you go. 下午好，外网的亲朋好友们，嘴馋好奇的美国朋友们，我们今天要做一个你们的家乡菜，著名的左将军鸡、左宗棠鸡 （General Tso's chicken）， a traditional, authentic, not Chinese dish. But it gives us a great opportunity to talk about some history that I personally am very, very interested in. For example, the topic that shouldn't be touched of Xinjiang, the Uyghur Rebellion, Dungan Revolt, as well as the actual general Zuo Zhongtang, if we're being honest, is the reason it's called Xinjiang, which just means the new frontier. We'll talk about all that later. So, General Tso's chicken, what is it? Well, it is, put simply, fried chicken covered in jizzy sauce, which is the format of a lot of North Americanized Chinese food. Just fried pieces of protein, you spend all day trying to make it crispy, and then you uncrispen it in a sauce. This one is acid and chili forward, or is meant to be because it was invented by a chef who was originally born in Hunan. So, let's start with the recipe, and then while we're prepping, we can talk about the bullshit, okay? It's called General Tso's chicken. Now, I want to be frank and clear right now that it has, at the very best, a infinitesimally tangential relationship to the man himself. The only reason it's called General Tso's chicken, and from now on, I want you to be able to pronounce the guy's actual name, Zuo Zhongtang, General Left. The only reason it's called this is because the general was also born in the Hunan province. That's the only reason. One of the greatest generals, if not the greatest general of the failing late Qing dynasty, was a man born in the Hunan province. And the chef was also born in the Hunan province. So he named it in honor of this imperial general for whatever the fuck reason. But I have chopped ginger and garlic to your heart's content and some dried chilies. The ratio of these are all up to you. If you had to bend my arm, I would say 20-gram garlic, 10 to 15-gram ginger, and about 20 dried chilies here. Here I have 300 grams of diced up chicken thigh, into which goes 1 egg. At which point we season with soy sauce, sesame oil, and cooking wine by the ratio of your choice, or if you consult our previous episode, we just use my cocktail of brown liquids here, which makes Chinese cookery so goddamn easy. And you go in there and you molest to your heart's content, finger and swoosh until you feel embarrassed at what you're doing to this chicken. So this is what it's gonna look like. A lot of liquid inside this batter, but that's okay because it is going to become our batter and not just the marinade. So whereas in most Western forms of cookery, the general thesis is to create a bowl of flavorful lube, put my meat inside, wait for ever. Overnight is best, but 4 hours in the fridge. And then we take our protein out and dump our money down the sink, and then take 3 whole separate containers of 3 separate ingredients, egg, flour, and breadcrumb, and do a fucking Morris dance. Like, good morning, Mr. Magpie, across my counter, everything up, then throw my egg, flour, and breadcrumb down into the drain again to messily fry my big pieces of meat. Or I can just do this, where I force the flavor in with my hand quickly, and then with the extra liquid, I build my batter around the meat, thus throwing nothing away. 10 white peppers in here? White pepper is what we're doing, white pepper. Cool. If you like it sweet, you may add more sugar. I barely ever do like it sweet, so this is how much. And then in here goes some baking powder, which is optional, but it will sort of tenderize the chicken because it is slightly alkali, much like how baking soda will. But beyond that, it will also help the batter puff up when it hits the oil. All right, so I like to put my baking powder in first, then mix. Comment, like, subscribe. From here, you're going to want to set your stove to the designated temperature. Instead of recipes saying fry at a low temperature, then fry at a high temperature, I prefer to actually give you numbers. So 145 is how I like my first fry, and then we're gonna fry it again at a second temperature to re-crispen it. This is my all-purpose mixed animal fat that I always have in my fridge for frying purposes. This dish was originally invented by, what's his name? Did you find it? So, Peng Changgui is his actual name. 1918 or 1919, the man was born. At 13, he ran away from his home to go be an apprentice for a famous Hunan chef. Like, he's like the Marco Pierre White of World War I China, of post-imperial China. And then after that, he became a 国宴厨师 for the nationalists. 国宴厨师 means like a national banquet chef. So 国宴 is essentially considered our zenith of culinary excellence, the equivalent to Michel Roux Jr. cooking for President Mitterrand at the presidential palace, or cooking for the queen. It's the exact same idea, right? That's the zenith of being a cook in China. In 1949, right before we were liberated, right before their plans for the country didn't work out, the nationalists fled to Taiwan. Mr. Peng went with them. It was during this-ish time that he developed this dish. He went to Taiwan with everybody to serve as a chef. And then from there, he made roads to America, I think New York, where he modified this dish, General Tso's chicken, to have more sugar in it and vinegar in it for that sweet and sour vibe to account for the American tastes. And then he took back the chilies, which is why it became an American Chinese food classic, alongside crab rangoon and chop suey, whatever the f those mean. And the reason he became so popular was Henry Kissinger was actually one of his regulars in America at the time. He would go and eat there a lot, so that made him famous. The 80s, he went back to Taiwan and opened up a chain of restaurants and worked until he died in 2016. So he's been around for a long time. 老先生一直工作到就是临走之前，98岁高龄，真的太佩服。That's the story of General Tso's chicken. Do you guys want to hear about General Tso himself? Oh, by the way, this is maybe 20 grams of cornstarch, but the recipe isn't really that important because it also depends on how wet your chicken is. Just keep on adding until it looks like there's a batter around your chicken. Unless you're super experienced like I recommend you start with little bits and mix until you get the texture you want. But this is roughly what you're looking for, right? See how all of our seasoning is not going to waste. It's become part of the batter, yeah? So this is a no waste way to cook, yeah? Instead of throwing all your money down the drain. Oh, I also have like one little leftover onion here, and I can cut it into super American Chinese food pieces. Yep. When your oil is up to temp, add it in one piece at a time. Feel free to break it up with your spatula. And this is where the magic happens. All this batter, scrape it directly into the oil as part of the dish. Because if we're honest, we're eating this dish because of the crispy batter. We're not here to have healthy food. Yeah? All right. So the man was born in 1814 in Hunan, to an impoverished Hunan, if we're being honest, because the South wasn't considered a very luxurious place to live during the late Qing dynasty, or even historically in China, but we'll get to that in another episode. He was famously shit at school. He failed the state exam 7 times, I think. And then he just decided to be self-learned. He just started to self-teach. And through a series of fortunate and unfortunate events, he started becoming a military leader. He showed promise. He led a volunteer force of 5,000 men called the Chu Jun. Let me fry this up first. What I want is what I get. So after a gentle fry at the first temperature for about 3 minutes until your chicken's most of the way cooked, you strain it out, and then we can prepare the wok for the second fry at the very, very high temperature. Let it drain of its fat first. Put that off to the side. Let it rest. What are some other cool things about him? Oh, he put down the Peace Rebellion, the Taiping Rebellion. So he put down the Taiping Rebellion. He led the Chu army of 5,000 volunteer forces. And then he was appointed the Governor General of Fujian and Jiangzhou. So he was Mingzhe Zhonglu. He was also the first person to formally create a shipyard that created modern navy for the Qing army. He was a good leader. He was smart. So why is it called Xinjiang, the elephant in the room? It's called Xinjiang because the word Xinjiang means new frontier. Before it was called New Frontier, it was a fucking mishmash. In the mid-1800s, there was this thing called the Great Game. The Great Game was this fuckboy mind game between the British and the Russians for who would be the big daddy of Central Asia. And he was given the choice, both fortunately and unfortunately, to make a decision. What's more important? Fucking with the Japanese and having a foothold in the Pacific, or holding our western frontier and getting back that land from the Russians? Because in 1 generation, the Russians will be at my neck. The Japanese will be 2 generations from me after I've long been dead. So he made that decision for his career and for his country at the time to be given the task of reconsolidating the western frontier. Now, this is weird because this part of history I have to be very, I'm not going to use the word careful, but sensitive to everybody involved. Because for better or for worse, everybody is subject and victim to their own flavors of propaganda and narrative in their countries of origin, birth, and residence. So I want to be indeed sensitive to everybody listening to this story in the sense that I want you to have the facts as I have them with as little coloration as possible. So the rebellion started in Shanxi, Ningxia, Gansu, which is where all of our Muslims hanging out. Are Dungans, essentially. They're called Dungan people now anywhere outside of China. Are Hui people, back when they looked different from Chinese people, in Central Asia. So now they're in Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. These 3 places still have these people, Dungan people, and they speak a version of Mandarin with Arab words in it, written in Cyrillic. It's a really magical language, you guys can search it up. And they're called Dungans. There was an altercation in 1862 between a Han person and a Hui person over who owned a bunch of bamboo poles for construction. And the officials sided with the Han people because they were racist. Because it went Manchu, Han, Hui. We were all the way down. There was a lot of racism. This on top of the fact that there was a lot of heavy taxation from the central government in Beijing because they were useless at this point. Heavy taxation, government falling apart, and the Muslims went, fuck these guys, and started a revolt. Now we call it the Muslim revolt, but it was actually the Dungan revolt. So during the Dungan revolt and the entire mishmash shit show of that area, there was this one man called the Yaqub Beg, was the person that our man General So was up against. He was a minor leader, essentially, and he consolidated power during the Dungan revolts and had an empire of 7 cities. When they established it, the English immediately signed up a commerce agreement with them, and the Russians signed up a trade agreement with them, and de facto gave this empire international recognition at the time. And then the central government went, oh fuck, we should probably do something about this. So they asked my boy Zuo Zhongtang to deal with it. So this guy says, all right, cool, I'm gonna need my boys. And his boys were the Hunanjun, the Xiangjun, so his own dudes. He took a bunch of spicy dudes from the middle of the country who grew up in the spicy tree tropical forests of China with no desert training whatsoever and said, let's go, boys. And then he assembled armies from every racial group he could get his hands on because his logic was that this way they have no loyalty, so they'll fight with no mercy. So he had Sula. Sula is Manchurian for leftover. Essentially bannerman elite soldiers who didn't have an active post. So these would have been noble sons, young people, old retirees that used to be soldiers, useless cunts. But they looked good on the field because they had the best armor and they were well fed. About 8,000 of these guys. Then 12,000 Heilongjiang soldiers comprised of ethnic Mongols, ethnic Manchu, the last elite horse archers of the empire. These guys. He also had Xiangjun, he also had Chuanyong, more other spicy dudes from the middle of the basin. Just grunt, spice that love to fight but with no equipment. I think a force of 20,000 strong Han, or Lü Maoziying, green army soldiers, which are just ethnic Hans. And they also had surrendered Hui peoples from previous altercations. Altogether, a force of 60 to 70,000 soldiers strong to retake the West. So he set up good supply lines and pushed his armies forward slowly and steadily, and then retook these cities one at a time, using modern weapons and I think Kruppe, German armaments, like bombardments, big cannons. First time that the Qing had ever fielded German armaments on the field. And he took back the Northwest. 1877, when Yaqub Beg, the leader of the Khanate, decided, I'm not winning this, and he poisoned himself, or he was poisoned, a very Ottoman way. So after this, from then on, my boy Zuo Zhongtang decided to call it Xinjiang, and we still call it that to this day. So this is not a modern problem. Racism on our western frontier and in Central Asia has been a pan-world problem for way longer than any of us has been around. If it wasn't the Ottomans, it was the Greeks. If it wasn't the Greeks, it was the Romans. If it wasn't them, it was the Russians, the Prussians, the English. If it wasn't those guys, it was us. We were just the most recent to the party, and unfortunately, we're now popular during a time when the internet is most powerful, so it's easy to look like the bad guy. But this has been a historical issue, shared by many people. So yeah, no, that's the history. That's why it's called Xinjiang. I still have no idea why the fuck a chicken dish is named after him, but there you go. All right, so we have our chicken, and we're now gonna go for the second fry. So oil goes back inside the pan, and we're going to re-crispen our chicken at a higher temperature. While that oil is heating up, which will take no time at all because I have 10 kilowatts of power diverting to my stove, I'm gonna take my shaky sauce and add a bunch of vinegar, sugar, 20 to 50 grams, depending on how American you want it to taste. Now, as my oil smokes, in goes my chicken pieces for my second fry. You want this to be quite violent. You want the oil to be the temperature around 200-ish degrees, and that's what's gonna give you a very crispy crust, refreshed and revitalized. And the best part about having 10 kilowatts is you can actually cook like a real Chinese kitchen. Override thermal inertia with just raw wattage. As you can see, my chicken is really nice and crispy, separated into chunks, fully cooked at this point. At which point, I'm gonna drain it a second time, and with the remaining fat in the pan goes my onion, my garlic, and my ginger, my dried chili. Give that a toss. Now, you don't want to cook in earnest these veg. You just want to toast them till they're just not raw. So you want it to be a half-cooked sort of a vibe, you know? Shiny vegetables, you know? Then in goes your chicken. Now in goes my sauce. Now if you like more sauce, make it more liquidous, and then you make the traditional cornstarch slurry. If you want more sauce, feel free to water your seasoning down as you see fit, but you're gonna finish this as you finish most Chinese adjacent foods by adding a cornstarch slurry near the end. So around the edge of the pan, and here you have it. General Tso's chicken. Wow. It doesn't look great, but it looks fine. Yeah, if you put this on some takeout rice, this would be a great hangover meal. 那就是一个齁甜雀儿黑的酱，包裹着一个他们自己能吃得习惯的炸鸡，这就是他们早期认知当中的中餐。我不往里面放番茄萨司已经很不错了。So yeah, this is it. Feel free to serve it on top of rice if you so wish, but this is it. General Tso's chicken. The actual recipe from front to back is 20 minutes maximum. I don't usually make it at home because, as you can see, oil's everywhere, but this is about as good as it gets. It is worth making at home. There's no point in paying $10 for fuck this. Yep. 这个味儿。嘉儿，你要不要过来尝试一下传统美式中餐？就不会难吃，毕竟是相由交响乐嘛。就是中国人吃了之后不会觉得因为该有的风味都有。但是你说这是中餐吗？我才没有任意一个中国人说哦，这是传统什么什么中餐。拿走放那个大桌子上，你们拿去吃吧。I can't have any more of that. It reminds me of too many arguments I've had with all of my colleagues and like during my apprentice days. We're like, hey, do you want to go for Chinese food? And they would always ask me, so how different is this from authentic Chinese food? I'll be like, brother, it's not that it's not authentic Chinese food. It's that it's authentic something else. Comment, like, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this, comment, like, subscribe. Because why not comment, like, subscribe? And we get to talk more about history that you don't really care about. Next to food that you also might not care that much about. But I'm happy to do it for you. Talk often, talk soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. By the way, I have nothing against American Chinese food. I personally think it's hilarious and sometimes good. Like in the same way that I think that American Italian food is hilarious and sometimes good. There's a reason for it to exist. It is valid as a food.